Yourselves, reasons for your successes and your failures. I hope everyone's gotten a bulletin and see who you need to keep on your prayer list. As far as my test results go, I got, as far as they're concerned, they're not concerned. So if they're not concerned, I'm not concerned. So that's good. Anybody else we need to add on our prayer list that wasn't in the bulletin? Or did we have an update for?
Chance that Bear could come home tomorrow or this week.
Cool. Good. You didn't hear that? Bear might be able to come home tomorrow or this week sometime. That's always good. It's good in one sense, and it's not good in another sense that there will be full-time carekeepers and then you don't have any help. That's what I thought when our twins first came home from the hospital. You drive up in the driveway and they're in the back seat and in the little car seat and they go, okay, what do we do now? Yeah, they're doing a lot. I understand that. I knew it was too close. But Dave, would you lead us in a prayer before we start?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day where we can come and learn. We thank you for David for leading our minds in this lesson. God, we thank you for the avenue of prayer where we can thank you for helping those that we've asked for help for, but also for the ability for us to ask for additional help for those that need it. God, we ask that you be with this world. There's some turmoil going on all the time, and we ask that you be there, present, and use all those things to your good. God, we thank you for good, and we thank you for the fact that you gave us your word so that we can do those things that are good. We ask that you always be with us. It's in your Son's name that we pray.
Amen. We're on lesson 11, page 58 in the book. We've been examining ourselves about different aspects of our lives, our Christian lives specifically, and today we're going to talk about successes and failures. I want to preface this lesson, and I understand where the author's coming from, but I want to preface the lesson with sometimes we all have failures in our life that are no fault of our own. He kind of makes it seem at the back of the lesson where if you do all these things, you don't have failures. Or if you have failures, it's because of this or that. And it could be, but sometimes you do everything right and you still have failures. You can do everything right as a parent and still have a child that's not faithful. You can do everything right as far as the way you live, the characterization that you put forth, how you treat somebody as a neighbor, and they never respond to an invitation to church, and as far as you know, they never respond to the gospel. But it's for us to just plant the seed, and then God gives the increase. I just wanted to put that out before we begin in our lesson today. And if you have a comment, wave your hand. I'm not wearing my contacts today because I didn't want to have to bother with my reading glasses. I can read fine without my glasses, but my glasses, by the way, my glasses are in the car, so I'm wearing those when I drive, so I'm legal. But I just didn't want to have to bother with my glasses because when you look up and down, sometimes it gets kind of swimmy. Although we may not be aware of the reasons why we do certain things, the reasons are there nevertheless. We succeed because, and we fail because. In this lesson, the author hopes to examine some of the reasons for both our successes and failures. The principles involved apply to people in general and to us Christians in particular. And he starts with successes. You want to start with the good things first. As a manager, they always tell you when you're talking to an employee, doing a review or whatever it is, you always start with their strengths first, and then you come up with what you need correction on. Oh, does anybody else need a book? I'm sorry, I didn't ask. Miss Barbara needs one. Anybody else? We're almost done with the book. And I'm going to tell you how you cheat. You can scan your book into a PDF and then turn it into a text or into a Word document. That way, my book has no answers written in it. I tend to give these away to somebody else, and I wanted them to search for the answers, so I didn't put them in there. I would encourage you to do that if you don't want to keep it for further study, to give it to somebody you know. Let them study who didn't attend our class. Success is measured in cans, not in can'ts. I can do this, and there is I can't remember what the saying was. I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it. Sometimes my Google foo is not as good as it is at other times about the can and the weight of the can. A cant weighs more than a can. There's a parable about that, and I can't remember what it is. But cants are bad. When you say, I can't do something, we do the same thing with our children. They'll say, I can't. I go, you didn't even try. I can't tie my shoes. Well, you haven't practiced. You haven't tried. I can't brush my teeth by myself. You haven't tried. I mean, you say that a lot because kids say, I can't a lot. Adults tend to do the same thing. I can't do that. I can't teach a Bible class. I can't stand there and talk to people in the park. I can't do this. Have you ever tried? I'm going to pitch something for Jeremy. We're fixing to have a teacher's meeting. If you haven't taught in a long time, or if you hadn't taught ever, see about what you can do. See if you can volunteer. And I will guarantee you, I know there are kids most of them will hug you no matter what, but if you teach them, man, they really hug you. They're happy to see you come in. Little David, he's got the same name as me. He always comes and talks to me. Hey, Mr. David. He likes it here. We want to have an encouraging environment. So see if you can be a teacher. This first verse, Philippians 4:13, it comes from a positive attitude which was expressed by Apostle Paul, who said, I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? You can do all things. Does that mean, if I wanted to climb a big, tall tower, I can do it? Because Christ is going to strengthen me? You have to work up to it. They did a 4-mile walk yesterday. I asked Aubrey how it went. She goes, she did 5 miles because she went back around the loop and picked up the signs telling you where to go. You can ask Miss Susie, 4 miles isn't long if you're used to it. But if you're not used to it, it gets long. But you can do it. He talks about the little train in this section. I think I can, I think I can. We all learned that as a little kid. What happens the first few times he says, I think I can, I think I can. Don't quite make it. But he keeps saying, I think I can, I think I can. Finally, he does, makes it over that mountain. Edison said he didn't fail 1,000 times to make the light bulb. He found out 999 ways not to make it. So he learned from his failures. They weren't failures, they were just, what did he call them? He called them, not experiments, I can't remember now. But he learned. It took 1,000 times to make a light bulb stay on. Success comes when you believe that you can do something because you have a strong source from which to draw. Who is the source the Christians have to draw from? God. And if He's on our side, who can stand against us, right? And that's not to say, I know a lot of times people will say, well, I'm not going to pray for success in business, or I'm not going to pray for success in a ball game. You have the invocation at the beginning of a ball game, at least you used to. They're trying to bring that back now. And most of the time, I was offered that chance to do that at a soccer tournament years and years ago when the kids were little. And you don't pray for one side to win and one side not to win. You pray for everybody to have good sportsmanship and to be safe and nobody to get hurt. Because God, think about this. And I thought about this. I've read a book long, long time ago, and it's about World War I, and where the entire battle stopped for them to have a Christmas celebration. They ate Christmas dinner together, Germans and Americans. They heard each other singing Holy Night, and they said, hey, we got this, and they got that. They put their meal together, and they had a meal for that one night. Next night, they went back to shooting at each other. And during that meal, they had this conversation. They have, we've been praying to win this war. And the other guy said, well, we've been praying to win this war too. And he goes, I wonder which side God's on. God's on the side of truth. That's all you can say. Booker T. Washington once said, I have learned that success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in his life, but by the obstacles which he's overcome while trying to succeed. Is there anybody sitting in here today that didn't have obstacles in their life? Or does it have obstacles? Everybody has obstacles. For some of you, it's an obstacle just to get up out of bed and get going in the morning. I'm not quite there yet, but oof. I know now. I made fun of people that walk like that when I was little. I don't make fun of them anymore. When you become 62 and your hips hurt and you get up, you got to sit there for a second on the side of bed before you stand up, or you might crash right into something. Yeah, you realize, I'm not as young as I used to be. And they always say, oh, if I could just bottle that energy when the kids are running around. No, I think it would kill me. This body's not made for that energy anymore. You have to realize that. Clint Eastwood said, a man's got to know his limitations. That 4 mile mark would have been a limitation for some people.
David, it says success is not measured in, or is measured in cans, not can'ts.
Yes.
I know where he's going with that, but I think in some ways we do measure success in can'ts, because as your can'ts disappear, that should be encouraging to us, as far as, look, I've been able to overcome this temptation or whatever the case may be. I can't do that anymore. Or it's those things that, I can't do as far as I've accomplished now. I've learned how to do it, how to get past these things, whatever it is. But so you can do that balance and see, because sometimes it is good to take an evaluation of where you're at compared to where you were. Those can'ts that have disappeared, if that makes sense.
So you're doing the reverse psychology on it.
A little bit, because it's good to look at those things.
Yes.
That, and see. It's good to look at the cans now, but at the same time, it's those cans that,
That would be a success. If you make a list, in fact, it reminds me of an employee I had at the bank. There was a coworker of mine. Everybody has bucket lists, and you have to-do lists, and you have this list and that list and sticky notes. You don't want to come look at my desk. I keep sticky notes in business. And she wrote a list, and it was, I can't speak Spanish, I can't be a teller, I can't, what was the other one? I can't service desktops. And there was 4th thing. She had 4 I can'ts on there. Well, by the time the end of the year was up, she could speak Spanish conversely by using whatever that software is, because we were bilingual at the bank. And she could be a teller. She took all the classes to become a teller and ended up being a head teller. And then she took a PC course so she could work on desktops. So she was some of the technical support at the branch she worked at. And I don't remember the last one, but she marked all those can'ts off by the end of the year. And I remember her supervisor asking her, okay, what are you going to do next year? And she goes, well, I can't own a house. And she kept on going for there. So she worked toward that. But you're right. You can actually measure successes in your can'ts once you mark them off.
So what comes to mind is I saw it pop up, this heavy metal type of guy that was his life for
I see you laughing over there.
16 years, something, I think it was 16 years. Well, he was heavy metal his whole life, but 16 years ago he decided that sobriety was important. He put away all that stuff. Well, I think it was some radio host has a podcast, whatever, and he smokes weed the whole time that he's interviewing people. But he invited him to come on, and the guy said, well, I will if you won't do that in front of me. And the host wouldn't, commit to that. He said, well, then I can't commit because I can't be around that. I can't be in those situations. I can't present, myself that temptation. And the thing that his phrase, his statement, his final statement was, my sobriety is more important than your interview.
Correct.
And so we have to kind of think that way. I can't do this because my Christianity is more important than what you're asking me to put myself in front of, even if I don't fall into the trap. I don't want to get near it.
Yeah, David brings up a good point. Our Christianity is more important than, put a line under there, it's more important than some friends. It's more important than our family in some points. It's more important than something the world might seem successful. I know I have been in the position, and I know a lot of you probably have, where a work relationship event was going on and they were going to have it at a bar, or they were going to have somewhere, and they go, oh, we got an open bar. Well, I'm not going to be there. Oh, everybody needs to be there. That's where that's where you make connections and you move up. Well, moving up's not that important to me if I got to be in that kind of situation. And it's everything, each one of us have to look at that really every day of your life. I know people say, well, I decided to follow Christ when I got baptized and I haven't never looked back. That's true. But every day you make decisions based on your Christianity. Will I do that or will I do this? Can I say yes to that or do I have to say no? And sometimes saying no is really hard. Sometimes a success that we think might be a success ends up not being. I'm determined to get finished today. Number two, success is attained when there is a great determination to reach the goal one has set for himself. We refer again to Paul, who said, Philippians 3:13, "Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before. I press toward the mark for the prize, the high calling of God in Christ Jesus." What does that mean when he forgetting those things behind? What does that mean? And looking forward. To you, what does that mean personally?
You don't dwell on them. You don't let them hold you back.
You don't let them hold you back. If something bad happens, just move on. There's going to be bad stuff happen in everybody's life. What do they say? In every life, a little rain must fall. Sometimes it's a flood, and you just got to get up on the high ground and keep going. What you don't want to do is say, and I've seen this many a time, is why did God let that happen to me? Why me? Why me, God? Well, why not you? Maybe he wants to strengthen you. Maybe this is something that you're going to come through and be better for. Or maybe you're going to be the shining light when all these other people are going through the same thing, that they can look towards you. We always have to look for our successes. Nothing could stop Paul from reaching that goal. Not persecution, not various kinds of peril, not imprisonment. Somebody turn to 2 Corinthians 11. 2 Corinthians 11, read 24 through 31. That's his list of what he went through. 2 Corinthians 11, 24 through 31.
I think about two things when I think about Paul and what this says that we see with people, at least that I see with people that struggle to reach a goal or struggle to be consistent, whether it's in attendance at church or faithfulness or whatever in life. And you see a lot of times they either continually talk about all of the things in their life, the struggles in their life that keep them from attaining, right? Whether it's physical issues or mental issues or family issues. And then too, you see on the flip side of that, those who say, well, look at all that I've already done, attained, accomplished. I can relax now. I don't have to keep trying for anything else.
We're getting there.
Kind of two different sides, of the coin.
Yes, there is. Don't let people hold you back. Don't let things, we're human, and we are really good at making excuses. And we'll talk about that with a slothful person in a minute. 2 Corinthians 11, 24 through 31. Just listen to this list. Who's got that? Go ahead.
One of the Jews 5 times received 40 stripes, saved 1. Thrice was I beaten with rods, once was stoned. Thrice I suffered shipwreck. A night and a day I have been in the deep. And journeyings often in perils of water, in perils of robbers, in perils by my own countrymen, in perils by the heathen, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and painfulness, and watchings often, in hunger and thirst, and fasting often, in cold and nakedness, beside those things that are without, that which cometh up upon me daily, the care of all the churches. Who is weak, and I am not weak? Who is offended? I burn not. If I must needs glory, I will glory of the things which concern my infirmity. The God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, which is blessed forever, and knoweth that I lie not. In Damascus, the governor of Aretas, the king, kept the city of Damascus, and garrisons, desirous to apprehend me. And through a window in the basket, I was let down by the wall and escaped his hand.
Most of us would have given up long before that list kept going. And I never really had counted it out, but he puts down here 195 stripes from a scourge. Every one of those stripes left a scar. So can you imagine what his body looked like? But he kept on going. That's why he can say in this next verse he quotes, "For I am now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course, and I have kept the faith." Then he has that crown of life laid up for him. But not just for him, but for us that don't have to go through near that to get to the end.
David, beyond the fact that Paul is the Tom Hanks of the Old Testament as far as going and traveling with him, when you see that verse, Philippians 3, 13 through 14, he's saying, he's saying not to look back at these things, but I think it's more, not necessarily from these things that he had done to him, but those things that he had done to others. And how he could dwell on the fact that he persecuted the church, and he did terrible things to people, you know, and yet he chose to focus on the future things. So I know he was always wanting to make up for that as much as he could, but he also he knew he had been forgiven. So he didn't allow that to define his future, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're correct. Because a lot of times I think we will ask for forgiveness, and God forgives us, but then we don't forgive ourselves. We dwell in what we've done and how bad that was, or I can't do any better. I'm trying, and so you're right. He probably was thinking of that too, plus all the other stuff that he went through. He didn't let it get him down.
It's very selfish for us to wallow in our failures and our weaknesses for two reasons. One, we're saying, God, I don't believe that you can actually forgive me and use me anyway. But two, it keeps us looking at ourselves rather than looking at how we can serve others.
Correct. And everybody can serve others. I know I've had people personally tell me, God can't forgive me. I've done this, and thing. We did a Bible study way back when Highland Gardens was still a thing, before it became Redland Road, with Jewel Miller film strips. And over on Capitol Avenue, where they have the beautiful azaleas out in front of the houses. We were at a house there, and we're doing the Bible film strips, and she invited her neighbors to come over. And one of her neighbors had just gotten out of prison after 29 years for murder. And he goes, God can't forgive me of what he did. I served my time, but God can't forgive that. And yeah, he can. If we tell ourselves that God can't forgive us, what are we doing? We're limiting God, and there is no limit. God can forgive everybody. He sent the best sacrifice, the only one worthy of forgiving sins, to the cross for that person, for you, for me, for anybody.
So David, I'll say this about one, yes, we limit God's ability and the grace and the things that he has promised us, and that we hold ourselves to a standard that God has not.
Right.
But what I was about to say is that I want to hear from people that were able to avoid sin, that were not tempted by it, or they were able to, even if tempted, they were able to avoid it. I want to know what they did to avoid that. But I also want to know from those people that fell into that temptation, how did you get out of it?
Right.
And so when we say God can't use me, that's incorrect, because now, in like Paul's case, how did you overcome that guilt? How did you get past it? Somebody that struggled with sobriety, this individual, I don't know that he's a Christian, but if he, did, I want to know how he got past those things. That way I can help others, even if I'm not, struggling with it, or if I am, I can look to that as an example of how to get out of it. So God is using people that have overcome,
Yes.
as much as he is those that never had to overcome.
There is somebody somewhere. Now, a lot of times we'll say, well, nobody's gone through what I've gone through, or nobody has the same problems I have. Maybe not, or maybe they do. But there are some problems that how I got out of this can work with this problem over here. And you don't know unless you share that with somebody. And it's not, well, as a human, it could be embarrassing to admit faults and what happened to us, but it's not bad if it helps somebody else in their struggles.
So the bold part of this is there is a great determination to reach the goal, and that's what Paul said when he said that he buffeted his body daily. It took every day for him to say, I'm not going to sit here and just kind of dwell in the prison or whatever. I'm going to get up every day. I'm still going to write letters. I'm still going to do what I can from this situation. So he buffeted his body in many ways.
Let me ask you this question on top of that. When does a Christian retire? When does a Christian retire? When he dies, or when Christ comes back, whichever comes first. You don't retire from being a Christian. You're always a Christian. You're always sharing. You're always looking for opportunities. You're always a light to somebody. So you're never retired. Success is always also measured by what we do for others and not by what we do only for ourselves. He mentions the Dead Sea. It's dead because it only takes in and it doesn't put out. Love thy neighbor is not a new doctrine, just an often neglected one. I know some of us have neighbors that are hard to love.
Hey, watch it.
He's my neighbor. I love you, brother. Could the priest? He talks about the priest and the Levite and the man that was wounded. Could they have done better? Yes, they could have. But they were all ceremonially washed and they couldn't touch anything. They were going to the temple. They were going to do the good thing. But they couldn't be bothered with helping that wounded man. So the lonely Samaritan, the guy who shouldn't have had anything to do with him, is the one that stopped and helped him. Over on page 59 of the book, toward the bottom, it says, between the great things we can't do and the little things we won't do, the danger is we shall do nothing at all. It's a pretty good statement. There's things we won't do. There's things we can't do, so we're not going to do anything. They have names for this, of course. Decidophobia. That's actually a name. I looked up and said, no, that's made up. They can't decide. No, that's the clinical word. Decidophobia is a fear of making decisions. Can I do it or can I not? There's another one called atheophobia. It's the fear of failure. So I don't do anything because I can't fail if I don't do it. And we often at work call it analysis paralysis. We spend so much time trying to figure out how to do it, what to do, when to do it, that we don't do it anything. We're paralyzed by our analysis of the situation. We don't want to be like that. We want to help others. I won't bring his name up, but there's a brother that prays here regularly for our contribution, that if you didn't give a chance to give today, that you pray that they'll have more next week so they'll have something to share. That's why we should want to be successful, so we can share that with other people, so we can help other people. I often say that we're the only Bible some people will ever read. There's some people who never darken the door of a church building, but they see us as Christians out in the world. How do we act? Do we help them? Or do we act like, I don't have time for that? Sometimes, I had this discussion with a teenage boy. We were out knocking doors in Highland Gardens a long time ago. We came to this house that had trash in the yard and a broke down car. Paint was peeling off. And he goes, we don't need to go there. They're not going to listen anyway. And I said, wait a minute now. You don't know that. You don't know anything about these people. You don't know how responsive they might be. He goes, yeah, but you can tell. They don't care. They don't care about the yard. They're not going to care about God. He did kind of have a point, but we went and knocked on the door anyway. And it was an old lady. And her son was supposed to be coming and doing the yard and cleaning up, and he didn't. And she was receptive, but she said, this was the total answer. This kind of made the teenager mad too, that she said, well, I've been a Baptist since birth, and that's how I'll die. So she wasn't going to come to the Church of Christ. You can't help that, but we tried. So next time you decide not to make a decision, you got decidophobia. Remember that. It's a clinical term. Success is also accomplished by being fully equipped for the known tasks or opportunities ahead of us. How are we equipped as Christians? By study, by learning things from classes like this, by studying the Bible, by listening to people, by there's podcasts out there, there's study books out there. I think right now it's the easiest time in history to study because of the internet. Now, granted, you have to be careful what you study on the internet because you can't trust everything that's out there. But there's so many study helps. I didn't used to use the Strong's Concordance because it was just like, it's this huge volume you get out. It's got all these weird numbers with all these things on there. Well, now you just click on a button and it takes you to the Strong's, where it's at, tells you what it means, tells you what all the Greek and Hebrew. No, you can't not use it now. So don't let anything excuse you for not being equipped.
David, you just used the analysis paralysis and the decision what?
The cytophobia.
Yeah, decidophobia. Sometimes, though, we use the fact that I'm not fully equipped to avoid things. So I understand where he's going with this, but at the same time, we're all learning.
Right.
And so I'll never know everything in this Bible. It's just not going to happen, down into the weeds and things, but I can tell people about what I do know.
Right.
So I can't let my thoughts that I don't know enough to teach someone
No.
be the limit for me going and doing what God's asking.
That's an excuse. I know somebody asked me one time, what do I need to know? How can I teach others? I go, when you made the decision to be baptized, you can teach somebody what you did and why you did it. Because you knew enough to do it. You can teach somebody else why you did it. That's teaching. You don't have to know everything. It's teach, baptize, teach. You never stop learning. Like I said, you never retire from being a Christian. He talks about the virgins here, and the ones who took the wise ones were the one who took extra oil. They prepared when they were prepared. So they got to go in, and the other ones had to run, find oil, and came back, and the door was already closed, and it was too late for them. Did those wise virgins know that he was going to be delayed? No. But they were prepared just in case. When you prepare for something, we have preppers, we have preppers that put food away and stuff away in case we have an emergency. You have people who, and it would make sense 100% for somebody who lives on the coast where you have hurricanes that come in, having some emergency preparedness stuff and maybe a go bag where you can get in a car and leave, because a lot of times if you leave too late, you're stuck in traffic. We have those reversed lanes and still you see lines of people. It's the same way if you have something happen here, power outage or a tornado that happens in our area. The power was out when Hurricane Opal came through for 4 days. So do you have a generator? Not everybody had a generator. Not everybody had an ice chest. So, you have to be prepared. As far as a Christian is prepared, what are you preparing for? What is my end goal? Heaven. And for me to go to heaven and for me to take as many people with me as I can, starting with my family first and working out. How do you prepare for that? We study. We got to know how to get there. They make it easy now where you can either in your car or on phone, how do I get so-and-so? Give me the closest Walmart, no matter where you're at. Where's a Walmart? Oh, there it is. Go to that one. And it gives you directions. That's how, you don't have to prepare like you used to. It's like get out a paper map and plot the course you're going to take and that kind of stuff. And you drive and you had no idea what was ahead of you. There was no signal going, oh, there's traffic ahead or there's construction on this road, divert to here. No, there wasn't none of that. But now we don't have an excuse. It's so easy to teach, so easy to learn. I talked about teaching. I gave a plug for you earlier, Jeremy, about our teacher meeting today. That if they hadn't taught, when you study to teach a class, you learn more than the person sitting in the classroom. I guarantee you that. I have more notes than I'll get to. That's just the nature of the beast. Because if I don't prepare a lot of notes, I'll run out in 10 minutes. So, it's easy to prepare. But we have to do it. Yeah, they had to take that oil with them. It's not like, I probably need to take some extra oil. But then they don't. Or they're like me, I kept remembering, I've been back to the house and to the shop a couple times yesterday, I kept remembering, I need to bring a flashlight. I need to bring a flashlight there so I can see under my motorcycle. Well, I sat it on the counter twice. I went to home and left it on the counter and took it back. So I finally ended up stealing one out of his pole barn to use, so I could see. Preparing doesn't mean getting it all ready and then leaving it there. You get it all ready and put it in your heart so that you can teach others and you can be a success. Success is enjoyed by those who seek the strength they need to do things right. They believe in the philosophy expressed in this little poem. This is on page 60 in the book. Once you have a task begun, never leave it till it's done. Be the labor great or small, do it well or not at all. The only thing I have a caveat again, I like this poem, but the only thing I have caveat is do it well or not at all. That's a narcissist. If you can't be the best, you can't be number one, you're just not going to do it at all. If I can't win the gold medal, I'm not going to be in the Olympics. You know what? Winning the bronze medal ain't bad, you know. But we have those people that won't try. I'm not going to do well, so I won't try. You don't know until you try. This other poem is Don't Quit. I'm not going to read it all. It's a pretty good poem. Talking to Susie earlier about where it says, winners don't quit and quitters don't win. What is it to not quit? Is it hard to not quit sometimes? When you just have to push through? You ever been a long distance runner? When I was in junior high school, I ran the mile. I never ran the mile in competition because I wasn't fast enough. But I never quit. And when you first start running, it's hard. You just do a little bit at a time, and it gets easier. Same way with Christianity, sharing the gospel. At the very beginning, just ask somebody, hey, do you go to church somewhere? And then tell them where you go to church, you know. And, you know.
It was like that Alabama-Wisconsin game yesterday. They were talking about it on TV, you know. It was obvious toward the end of the game that Wisconsin was not going to win. But they were talking about the coach of Wisconsin. They said, he's the kind of guy, he's not concerned about the fact now that they're not going to win. He said he wants to see how they finish.
Yeah. You got to finish.
Yeah. Are they going to quit? Or are they going to finish the game?
That's what Bear Bryant and Saban used to always say. Most coaches that are good coaches always say, execute, execute, execute. It doesn't matter if the play is successful or not. Do your job. You know, a lot of people, I had this conversation with a friend of mine one time watching football, and you see the guy run, the defensive end runs way out here, but really out of the play. He goes, why is he way over there? He's not even, I said, no, that's his job. He comes over here, quarterback has to turn inside. He can't run around the end. That's his job. Don't go over here because then you're going to get beat around the corner. You have a job. They write these plays out for a reason. You go where you're supposed to go. If you're running back and they say this play's going in this hole, you better be in that hole because that's the hole. Sometimes you can bounce off and go somewhere else, but that's the play. They're going to open the hole for you to go through here. If you decide, I'm going to run over here, you're not going anywhere. Don't quit. Don't quit as a Christian. We don't retire. And don't say, I can't, until you say, I can. Everybody can. And it's not easy. And some, you know, it's not easy. It's not as easy for some people as for others. Some people are just naturally talkative and outgoing and they don't mind striking up a conversation. And some people are very timid. And it's hard to do that. Well, you know, being a Christian doesn't mean you got to go stand on the street corner and stand up on a box and yell at people. You can send a card to somebody or always be there. Take some food. You know, be that person that's always there as a Christian. Lasting prosperity and good success come to us when we observe the principle God put before Joshua shortly after Moses died and Joshua became the leader. This book of the law shall not depart out of the mouth, but they shall meditate therein day and night. Observe to do according to all that is written therein. That's what we should do. And then he talks down later in here, the obedience to the Lord's word guarantees success. It does not guarantee success in this life as far as worldly stuff goes. But if we're faithful to the word, we have success in heaven. We have that crown of life. Now he talks about failures, and we're down to the wire. When we look back over our failures, some of the reasons we failed may stick out like a sore thumb, while others may be less obvious. Some lack zeal and interest in their work. We'll skip down to where he says, the master was a hard man, and he was afraid. This is the talent man, the one talent man who buried his talent and didn't do anything with it. His master used 3 words to describe him. What were those 3 words? Wicked, slothful, and unprofitable. Do you want to be called unprofitable by God? Ooh. I don't want to be called unprofitable by anybody. Lazy people can give all sorts of reasons, excuses for not venturing out. I'm just not feeling it today. Or one of the, and I'm not talking bad about anybody if you have one of these at home, but the one that say, I'm not adulting today, those shirts, I know you've seen them. I'm not adulting today. Well, I'm sorry, you're an adult. You're going to have to adult today. Make decisions, be an adult. If you have one of those shirts, we can talk after. The slothful man saith, there is a lion without, and shall be slain again. He talks about him hiding his hand. What does that mean? Why you hide your hand? I'm too lazy to even move my hand to do anything. If I hide it, it's like I don't have a hand. I can't touch you. I can't do any work. I have no hands. But you can't say that, because I read a story about a lady with no hands that learned how to type 80 words per minute with her feet. I can't type 80 words a minute with the fingers that are supposed to type, but with her feet, 80 words a minute. She let no hand stop her. It said, it grieveth him to bring it to his mouth. Slothful means being lazy, indolent, sluggish, unwilling to exert themselves or work, with a general lack of effort. On page 62 in the book, some give up too easily. Talking about the quitters. Down in about the middle of that paragraph, Paul once wrote, I marvel that you are so soon removed from him that called you into grace of Christ unto another gospel, Galatians 1:6. And then later on down it says, from that time many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him. A quitter never wins and a winner never quits. Can you imagine that? You walked with Jesus, the Son of God, saw the miracles, and you still turned around and walked with him no more. That's another thing why I talked about my preface to the lesson about sometimes failures just happen because evil is in the world and some people are too influenced by it. You can do everything right and still not have a success with that person. Some let worldly attractions and pleasures choke out their spiritual aptitude. And he mentions the sower that put on the rocky ground and it got choked out. You know, we got to make sure we don't do that as Christians. You could be a Christian, not just a youth or a young Christian, but a Christian who's been in the church for years, let things get ahead of you and choke you down and, well, I missed that service, or I didn't go to that, or, I got other things I want to do besides study my Bible, on and on and on. And the world can come and slowly choke you out. Many fail because they do not include God in their plans. We've already seen that the prosperous farmer in Luke 12 had no room for God in his plans. He mentioned no one but himself. The things I will do. I will do this and I will do that and I will do, and I can take it easy. That sentiment, eat, drink, and be merry, comes up in Ecclesiastes 8:15 and Isaiah 22:13 also. No God, no hope, no plan. Page 63 in the book, the fact is he did not even own the next day. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen next year or tomorrow. A lot of people say, when they talk about the verse down here about James 4:13, to go into a city and say, I'm going to do this and that, they say that's telling us we can't be in the stock market. That's an investment. It has risks. But if I say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get gain and I'm going to do that with my gain, we don't know that. I'm going to invest in this and then I'm going to be rich one day. Maybe, maybe not. Did you live through 2008? All your stock market and savings went to nothing. They call it a correction. It's a disaster to a lot of people. James makes very clear that the fact we should not make plans which leave God out. How do we include God in our plans? Is he in our plans for our vacation? Do we plan on worshiping while we're there? Do we look for a church? Is he in our plans for our family stuff? God should be in our plans. If the Lord will, then we shall live and we'll do this or that. They always say this, if the Lord willing and the creek don't rise. For a long time I didn't realize that meant the Indians, not the creek. But yes, if the Lord wills, because we don't know. Not only should we include God in our plans on our daily living, we should put his work first in our plans. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and these things shall be added unto you. How do we seek first the kingdom of God?
Well, every decision that we make, we consult the word of God to see if it's correct.
Correct. There were, I think Terry made mention of the brushes. What would Jesus do? I think that was a pretty good idea. What would Jesus do in this situation? I was thinking about a song when they talked about he did it. Little wonder that so many fell under the load they were trying to carry when they do it all by themselves. There was a song from 1972 called Lean on Me by Bill Withers. Leaning on each other to share your problems and load. I think of Jesus in Matthew 11:30, where he says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So lean on Jesus. I didn't quite make it to the end. but we did good enough. And there's some other examples of successes and failures. Moses had a success, went before Pharaoh even though he was scared in Exodus 4. His failure was, though, he struck the rock instead of spoke to it like God told him to. Joshua, he had a success when he defeated Jericho. The very end of the same chapter, he had a failure when he lost at Ai because, oh, we can do this with just a few men. He didn't realize there was sin in the camp. Peter, he had success. He was able to preach to the Gentiles. Went to see Cornelius. What was one of his failures? He was a hypocrite. Paul had to stand to his face because he was acting different in front of the Jews and the Gentiles, even after he'd already said that God has shown us that we can preach to them too. So thank you for your attention and your observance and your help. And we'll have a break for just a minute and we'll start our service.